Over the past few days in the CS market, we're continuing to see a small downtrend. In the past 24 hours, we're currently down about 1%. On the 7-day chart, we're actually down in the negative finally for the first time in a few weeks at about 3%. And from that all-time high, we're currently down about 4%. From the trade reversal, we're still up a huge amount. However, when we zoom into the graph here, we can see we're currently down about 200 million from the all-time high. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the current state of the CS2 case market. Over the past month or two, we've seen a large drop in the price on a lot of different cases in CS2, both in the rare drop pool as well as some of the items in the active drop pool. This pullback in the CS2 case market could be a huge potential for you guys to make some money over the next few years when you buy in at a lower price point compared to some of the people that were buying at that all-time high. When a lot of people are selling off these items, it's a great opportunity to pick them up at a discount, lower your cost average on a lot of these cases, and stock up while prices are a bit lower. When we take a look at some of the cases on the Steam market right now, something like the Prisma case, which is one of my favorite cases right now in CS2, we can take a look back at the 1-month chart. The all-time high was about $3.04 in the past month. We're currently sitting at a price point of around $2.40 to $2.37. This is roughly a 22% decrease in the market just in the past month on this case. We see a very similar chart also with the Prisma 2 case. When we look at the overall prices once again, we can see an all-time peak of around $3.15 in the past month. It did dip out to around $2.43. It's since recovered about 10 cents to 20 cents, and we're currently sitting around $2.55. This is a little bit smaller of a pullback at around 19%. However, it's still a huge pullback compared to its all-time high in the past month, and it's a great buying opportunity. We can also take a look back at some of the more recent cases that were removed from the active drop pool, one of them being the snakebite case. This one doesn't have as big of a dip compared to the Prisma cases. However, we can see around the all-time high of about $1.30. It now has dipped down to about $1.09. It's not the biggest pullback, however, it's around that 16 to 17%. It's another great buying opportunity if you are a fan of this case. I'm personally not a big fan of all the skins and gloves in this case. However, it is another great cheaper price point for CS2 investing. And finally, the most recent case to be removed from the active drop pool in CS2, we have the Fracture case. Once the Genesis terminal was added, this was removed from the CS2 drop pool, and we could see a massive price spike when it was announced that it was removed. It hit an all-time high of about $1.48. Since then, it's crashed and burned down to about 91 cents. That is a drop of around 37%, which is definitely an insane price in the past month to drop. If you are a fan of this case, I would definitely recommend buying into this right now. It could still see an even smaller pullback back to that around 70-cent mark. However, I definitely think over the next few years, it will have some great returns. Now that we've covered some of the biggest case price drops in the past 30 days, we need to take a look at some of the reasons why these prices have been falling in the past 30 days and if they're going to continue to fall and if it's a time to sell right now. One of the main factors that could be driving a pullback in the CS2 case market is simply cases unboxed. We can see from August to September, we were around 32 million cases unboxed. This is the lowest number since February and January of 2025. When we take a look back at some of the previous months, we can see March was in that 32 million case unbox number as well. April was around 37 million, May it shot up to around 39 million, and then it leveled out in June and July around that 35 as well as 37 million mark. We can also factor in something like current player counts in CS2. We can see the past few months are around that 1.4 to 1.5 million player count. We can see the all-time high for this year was around that March, April, May, around 1.8 million players. When we take a look back at something like last year, we can see that same peak in around April and May, where it did drop out in the summer, and then it picked back up in the winter months around November and December. We can assume the same for this year, and around the end of this year, in November and December, we could see a player count rise once again, which will bring some players back and prices to increase again once on those cases. I also believe that right now, a lot of people are selling off some of their case investments they've made some money on over the past few years in order to shift into some of the newer investments, like something in the armory that are discontinuing, or even some items that they know will leave the armory eventually in the next few months or a few years. The price on a lot of items in the armory did shoot up after it was announced that things would be discontinued from the armory. We can see the gallery case, graphic case, as well as the character craft stickers will be removed in a limited amount of time. We don't have an exact date, however, my pinpoint is around that October 2nd mark, which is the 1-year anniversary for the armory. Even taking a look at something like the Fever case, this wasn't announced to be removed from the armory. However, due to the announcement, a lot of people have been investing into other items in the armory that aren't currently being listed as that they will be removed. When we take a look at the price here, we can see the price was around that $1.35 mark. It did shoot up to around $1.79, crashed back down, and since then has gained a lot of price over the past few weeks, back to that $1.73 mark. We can see that people are investing into these cases, even though they're still active in the armory, and they are selling off some of those rare cases that they did have that are currently on that downtrend to pick up some of these items. I personally am also a bigger fan of the Fever case compared to something like the Gallery case, due to the AWP print stream, the Glock 18 Shinobu, as well as the AK-47. Also taking a look at the knives in this case compared to something like the Gallery case, I definitely think the knife finishes in here are a lot more valuable. We have the Doppler as well as the Marble Fade. We have it on the Nomad, the Paracord, as well as the Skeleton knife. We also see it on the Survival compared to something like the Kukri knife, which is in the Gallery case. Out of the two cases being the Gallery and Fever case, I personally am leaning towards the Fever case due to the fundamentals of the case, having some of those higher tier skins that a lot of people do sought after, as well as some of those better knife finishes compared to only having a Kukri knife, which is in the Gallery case. Due to this, I will be picking up a lot of these Fever cases until it gets announced they will discontinue, and then I do see a price increase on them. However, right now we have a massive amount of time to stock up on these items at those lower prices. With all that information and the current price on a lot of the cases in CS2, it's definitely a great opportunity to pick up a lot of these cases when a lot of people are selling them off or being fearful of a larger crash in the market. This is definitely the prime opportunity to load up on these cases, and I'm personally doing that as well. If you enjoyed this video or found it insightful, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.